Okay, in this video we're just going to talk about the power save modes on the Panasonic GH6, and this is included in quite a few of the Panasonic cameras, but specifically with the GH6 a lot of the questions and a lot of people's frustrations tend to be around the startup time on the camera. So using the power save modes is something where you can kind of alleviate that a little bit, and the startup time on the camera really depends on a lot of things. You know, you've got 2 card slots, so if you've got 2 cards in, it's going to take longer for the camera to kind of register them and start up, and the bigger the card and the more files that are on there, you know, that can all kind of add to it. So essentially what we've got is when we're switched off, what people could say is, you know, by the time you've got the camera switched on and you hit record or you try and take a shot, you could miss it because the startup time's just not quick enough. So we hit on, and then for me, I always find it's fairly quick, but I've seen quite a few people saying, you know, it's just not quick enough. So, and that is a valid point sometimes, you know, it's not always that fast. So to use the power save modes, what we can do is we can jump into, sorry, let me just grab focus on there. We can jump into menu, and then we're just in the movie dial mode at the moment, but you can use the power save features in any mode really. And then we're going to jump down into the wrench or the spanner, and then if we come down to the second menu in there, we've got so wrench and spanner, and then we've got the camera icon, and that's power save mode under monitor and display. And then if we jump into there, we've got 4 different options, and by default your top one actually will be switched on. So we've got sleep mode, which is the general mode, and you can set it to switch off after, you know, 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, all pretty self-explanatory. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to set it to 1 minute, and I'm going to let the camera go, but I'll speed this up if there's nothing to say in between. But basically this actually does a proper you know, like a sleep shutdown of the camera. So it's not switched off, but it's just putting it into a sleep setting, and there is a differentiation between that and just the kind of screen coming off. So yeah, if you can set it to what you want, you know, a minute or more, but this can be quite a useful feature. So coming back from the sleep mode in power save is a lot quicker than just switching the camera on and off. But the only thing with it is 1 minute is not always that practical. Sometimes you might just want to switch the camera off and switch it on when it's useful, you know, because that's just a few seconds in between doing things. But there are other features in there that we can actually make that are a bit better than this. So we've got, you can see it's gone into sleep now. So that was just after 1 minute. So that can be useful, you know, if you've got your camera locked off on a tripod or something like that, and just in between shots you walk off, maybe you sort out some mics, or, you know, you're just off doing other things, the camera puts itself into sleep, and what you'll find is you can press buttons on the camera and kind of nothing's happening, you know, we can press those, but then once you do a half press on the shutter, you can see we're straight back in, we're ready to shoot again. It is a lot quicker than switching the camera on and off. So that is an option you can use there, but we'll switch that off for the minute. Sleep mode Wi-Fi is just an on-off setting. Basically, what it does is it sets the camera to sleep 15 minutes after Wi-Fi is disconnected. So that's more really, I suppose, you know, if you've got the camera set to transfer a load of images or video and it's doing it all over Wi-Fi, and then if you've just left it on a desk or something and it has disconnected, then it will switch itself off eventually. And what you'll find is there are a few different kind of settings where the sleep modes won't actually work. So from what I can remember, it's basically if the camera's in playback, it's not going to do it because the camera's essentially in use. Obviously it's not going to do it if it's in like the middle of some kind of operation. So if it's doing like a focus rack, or it's doing I said video playback, things like time lapse, it's not going to do it in that. It also won't actually do it if you've got HDMI plugged out to an external screen. It's not going to do a power save then either. So there are a few times when you know, these will sort of be overridden by other options. And the same also actually if you're connected to external devices. So if you've got it plugged into a PC, or you're plugged in, you're using a printer over Wi-Fi or something like that. But yeah, that essentially is just an on-off toggle. So it's just, like I say, 15 minutes after disconnecting from Wi-Fi. And then here we've got the, this is essentially like the LVF and the monitor switching off. So again, you can do this, you can set this to 1, 2 or 5 minutes. So it's not going into sleep, it's just switching the screens off. But what you need to know about this one is you need the LVF, which we've done in another video, I'll link to that above. But you need your LVF to be set to the auto mode, so that's when the LVF switches on when you put your eye up to it, so when you go over this sensor. So we've got that on at the moment, and if we put that to 1 minute, and obviously come back out of the menu, because like I say, if we're in the menu it's not going to work. And again, what you'll find, if we just take that focus preview off, and what you'll find with this one is it will just switch the monitor off, but it's not going into a full sleep setting. So this will, it won't preserve the battery as much as the original sleep setting that we used, but it's still worth doing, you know, because the screen obviously drains a lot of power from the camera, and if you can have that off as much as possible, then you know that's worth doing. But again, it does it sort of after a minute, so it's not always that practical. And the next mode we come to might be one that for somebody that's out just doing photography, the next mode might be the one for you really over these ones. Again, this one's quite a good one for video, if you just kind of, you leave the camera unattended for a bit, or you set it down on the side, and quite often if you put the lens cap on the camera, sometimes you just completely forget about the about switching the screen off and things. So you can see there we've got monitor display off, and this time, rather than having to do a half press on the shutter, because it is just the screen, you can actually just press anything. So I could spin the wheel and it should come back, yeah, or press menu or Q or whatever you like, and basically the screen will instantly come back. And if we jump into, so we'll turn that one off. Now this one is probably the most interesting one out of the four. It's the Power Save LVF shooting menu. If we come into this, we've got two options: time to sleep, and you can see it's really short. It goes 1, 2, 3, 5, 10 seconds. So really, really quick shutdowns on there. And we've got method of activation. Control panel, for those who kind of don't know, if you hit the display button, this one here is control panel, and when we come out of that, that's essentially kind of like live view, but control panel technically is live view as well. It's a bit confusing really, but yeah, if we set that so it's control panel and then set that to say 2 seconds, just so we've got a bit of time, and then you can see here if you do the count 1, 2, it's not going to happen because we're not in control panel. But if we switch into it, 1, 2, and then we're into sleep mode. So for you know, even for video, if you're in the live view and then you switch into control panel, it's going to do that. Or if you're shooting, quite often you might just be using the control panel view anyway for photography, so that can be a really nice option. So rather than having to jump into you know, the power save options and everything and mess around, you can just do it that way, or completely switching the camera off. And again, if you press any of the buttons in this one, it has actually powered the camera into sleep, so it's not accessible by tapping any buttons or anything. You do have to do a half press on the shutter again, and because it's still in control panel, 2 seconds and it's going to go back off again. So you either got to be using the camera, or you know, or out of control panel, it's going to switch off again. And again, if you switch that into so the LVF isn't in auto, what you'll find that's not in auto now. I know it's a bit hard to see because you're just looking at the camera I'm holding, but when that's not in auto, you can see that's overridden that. So you can essentially just, if you're somebody that uses the live viewfinder just for photography, so you've got it like that, you can see in the window there it's not being switched off, so you can just shoot as much as you like. The camera's not going to switch itself off. And then when you want the camera to go into shutdown, you can just hit the LVF button, and then you can set that to 1 second or 2 seconds or whatever. And then, oh sorry, it's not in auto there. One more press, and then you can see it switched itself off. So just by quickly toggling on the LVF button, you can see you've got quite a nice quick way of putting it into sleep. And then if we come back again, what we can do, we can change that into while recording standby. And this essentially covers pretty much everything. So in control panel, it goes off. And then if we hit, let's just bring that back again. If we hit display and then come into live view, you can see it works for that as well. And again, if we just bring it back with a shutter, again, you can see if we bring it back into the toggle setting, it's going to go off. But if we bring it back again, and then we go into the non-toggle setting, which is this one, you can see the camera's it's not going to go into shutdown, it's just staying as it is. So you're essentially almost applying the sleep button to this LVF button, which is quite useful really. You can shut the camera down very quickly. So in one press of a button, 1, 2, and like I say, it can even be a second, you could drop that down even faster. So you've got just a really, really quick way to power save the camera, but also power save the camera, but also toggle that back off. And like I say, it's just a lot quicker than having to switch the camera off. Takes a little bit of time to shut down, switch it back on, and then, like I say, it has been fairly quick on mine. I think some of it might actually be part of the lens that's attached to it as well. But yeah, you can see on there that it's it can be quite a handy option. I think probably the last option more so if you're a photographer primarily, and the other two really if you're doing video work, they can be very useful, because the battery on this, it's not the best, I wouldn't say. So if you can preserve it as much as you can, then obviously that's that's ideal really. So yeah, if you found this video helpful, please give it a like. If you want to see more about the Panasonic GH6, then please check out the playlist on this channel, and please subscribe.